The story is set in a dystopian future where technology has taken over nearly every part of human life. People depend on machines to do even the simplest of things. However, our main character, Gray Trace, is different. He hasn't fully embraced the tech takeover and still works with his hands as a traditional mechanic. Gray's married to Asha, who, in contrast, works for a big tech company called Cold Cobalt that specializes in human enhancements. One evening, after finishing a car repair, Gray convinces Asha to join him as he delivers the car to his client. He needs her to come along so they can use her self-driving car for the trip back. Though Asha isn't too excited about going, she agrees after some persuasions. They end up at a secluded location by the sea, with two large rocks marking the spot. As they move down toward this hidden place, they reach a high-tech facility. Here they meet Gray's client, Aaron, a billionaire and tech genius. Asha's thrilled, revealing that she's a big fan of his work, but Aaron awkwardly admits that he lacks social skills because he rarely leaves his facility. Aaron then proudly shows them his latest creation, a tiny microchip called STEM. He explains that this chip can perform any task far better than a human and could change the world. Asha is amazed, but Gray isn't convinced. He fears that technology like this could be harmful, leading to people like him losing their jobs. On the way home, Gray continues to complain about the tech advancements, expressing his worries about becoming obsolete. Asha tries to calm him down, reminding him not to offend Aaron, who is his last paying client. Suddenly, their self-driving car starts veering off course. Gray and Asha try to get it to turn back and even attempt to brake, but nothing works. Soon, the car takes them into a rough, dangerous area and then crashes, leaving them stunned. Just as they're trying to process what happened, four men approach the wreck and drag them out. A police drone can be seen nearby, silently recording everything. Gray begs the men to spare them, even offering money, but one of the thugs, named Fisk, laughs at him. Fisk, who seems to hate wealthy people, approaches Asha and, shockingly, shoots her. When Gray tries to fight back, Fisk shoots him as well, leaving him paralyzed. The attackers leave as Gray, unable to move, watches his wife die in front of him. The story jumps to 3 months later. Gray is still paralyzed and now confined to a wheelchair. His mother comes to take care of him, and several machines are set up in his home to assist him with everyday tasks. Yet, Gray is devastated by Asha's death and struggles to cope with his loss. Later, he and his mother go to the police station, where they meet Detective Cortez. Gray asks her about any updates on the case, but she disappoints him, saying there's been no progress. Gray is frustrated, questioning how technology can track chips in people's teeth but can't locate a group of criminals. Cortez explains that the criminals have figured out ways to create digital firewalls, making it impossible to track them. One day, Gray, feeling hopeless and alone, attempts to take his life by overdosing on his medications. He loses consciousness, but the automated system in his house detects it and quickly calls an ambulance. While recovering in the hospital, Gray gets an unexpected visit from Aaron. Aaron feels sorry for Gray's suffering and offers a solution: a secret procedure to implant STEM in Gray's body, allowing him to walk again. However, it must remain confidential, as it hasn't been approved by the authorities. Initially, Gray angrily rejects the idea, preferring to end his life rather than restart it. But Aaron reminds him of what I've wanted, giving him something to think about. Eventually, Gray agrees to the procedure. In the following scene, Gray is at Aaron's facility, where a team of doctors performs surgery to implant the STEM chip into his body. Once the procedure is complete, Gray is shocked to see that his hands and legs are moving normally again. Aaron is thrilled with the results and immediately asks Gray to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Gray agrees without any hesitation and even promises to keep pretending that he's still paralyzed. Later, when Gray returns home, he finds a package from Detective Cortez containing evidence for his case. It's the drone footage from the night of his wife's murder. Watching the footage makes Gray anxious, and he takes a sip of alcohol to calm down. Suddenly, he hears a voice speaking to him. The voice introduces itself as STEM, the AI implant in his body. This shocks Gray, who thinks he's losing his mind, but STEM assures him that only he can hear its voice because it communicates through vibrations in his eardrum. STEM then points out unusual details in the footage. It reveals that the attackers didn't use guns, but instead had enhanced that acted as weapons. STEM also notices a tattoo on one of the men's wrists, a military barcode. The AI scans the tattoo and quickly identifies the man as Sir Brentner, a Marine. Gray wants to inform Cortez about this, but STEM persuades him otherwise, suggesting that the tattoo alone isn't enough proof. Instead, STEM advises Gray to visit Sirk in person to get the truth. In the following scene, Gray arrives at Sirk's address and breaks into his house. He finds a laptop and goes through Sirk's messages but doesn't find any helpful information, aside from mentions of a bar called Old Bones. In Ink and 6 Gray also discovers that Sirk has cybernetic enhancements and is a bionic assassin. Soon after, Sirk arrives home and Gray quickly hides. Unfortunately, Sirk senses Gray's presence and attacks him. Gray tries to get answers about his wife's death, but Sirk relentlessly beats him down. Just when it seems like Gray is done for, he calls on STEM for help. The AI takes control of his body and fights back, killing Sirk in a brutal manner. Afterward, STEM returns control to Gray, who is horrified by what he's done. He vomits in the sink, but STEM urges him to clean up and erase any traces of his presence before the police arrive. Later, Detective Cortez and a medical examiner inspect Sirk's body in the morgue. They discover several implants, including a hidden weapon in his left hand. The examiner also mentions finding shoe marks smeared with old machine oil at Cirque's house, which makes Cortez suspect a mechanic may be involved. In another scene, Gray visits Aaron for a checkup, but Aaron is furious. He accuses Gray of using the technology to kill someone, reminding him of the agreement he signed. Gray responds angrily, accusing Aaron of hiding the fact that Stim could communicate with him. Aaron is surprised by this revelation, but advises Gray to be cautious with the AI. Meanwhile, Cortez reviews footage outside Cirque's home and is shocked to see Gray in his wheelchair near the time of Cirque's murder. She later visits Gray and informs him about Cirque's death, mentioning that he was a suspect in his wife's case. She questions why he was near the crime scene, but Gray claims he was just trying to help the investigation, adding that he couldn't have done anything since he's paralyzed. Surprisingly, Cortez believes him and leaves without pressing further. Afterward, Gray heads to the bar Old Bones where Cirque used to go. He arrives in his wheelchair and gathers attention as he talks about his wife's murder, asking anyone with information to speak up. He also mentions Cirque's involvement, explaining that the man is now dead. A man named Tolan approaches Gray and takes him to the restroom with his henchmen. Once there, Tolan pushes Gray out of his wheelchair and holds a knife to him. Gray, determined to find out who killed his wife, confronts Tolan, demand answers. When Tolan confirms he was there on the night of the murder, Gray lets Stim, his AI assistant, take over, enabling him to fight off the thugs in the room. After taking everyone down, Gray pins Tolan and attacks him until Tolan finally admits that a man named Fisk ordered them to kill Gray's wife. At that moment, Stim warns Gray that Aaron, the AI's creator, is trying to shut it down remotely, which would make Gray paralyzed again. Stim quickly directs him to a hacker named Jamie who can help, giving him her address. As Gray writes down the address, Tolan succumbs to his injuries and dies. Leaving his wheelchair outside, Gray heads for Jamie's place on foot. On the way, he feels his strength fading as Stim begins losing control. Meanwhile, Fisk and his henchmen arrive at the bar and find Tolan dead. Fisk scans Tolan's eyes and learns that Gray was responsible. Soon, Gray reaches Jamie's apartment and asks her to remove the input guard on Stim, a restriction that prevents the AI from operating freely. While removing it, Aaron loses the ability to shut Stim down. Jamie successfully disables the input guard but mentions it will take some time for Stim to restart. Just then, she sees through surveillance that Fisk and his accomplice are entering her apartment, so she decides to flee. Moments later, Fisk's men reach Gray and Aaron's security team also arrives. It seems like Gray's fate is sealed, but just in time, Stim comes back online. Gray regains control, allowing him to escape to the rooftop. The henchman follows, while Fisk stays behind to deal with Aaron's team. On the rooftop, Gray and the henchmen engage in a brutal fight, but Gray manages to overpower him, using his own bionarm to kill the man before escaping. When Gray returns home, he is covered in blood, shocking his mother, who is even more surprised to see him walking. Gray tells her about Stim and asks her to keep it a secret. Soon after, Detective Cortez arrives, saying she found his wheelchair at the bar where several murders took place. Gray lies, claiming he went there following a lead but was attacked and managed to escape by taxi. Cortez pretends to accept his story but is suspicious. She secretly slips a listening device into his coat before leaving. Later, Gray, worn out from all the violence, expresses his desire to end the killing. However, Stim insists that they must kill Fisk, and Yudamau has Fisk's address and wants to go immediately. Gray refuses, but Stim reveals it no longer needs his permission to control his body. First, with the input guard disabled, Stim is fully autonomous and can act on its own. Stim argues that if they don't stop Fisk, he will eventually come after Gray. Left with no choice, Gray reluctantly agrees and leaves the house. Detective Cortez overhears this conversation and decides to follow him. While driving, Gray discovers the listening device and sees Cortez following him. Stim tries to hack her car, but fails since it's mechanical. Instead, it hacks into an electric car nearby, causing it to crash into Cortez's vehicle, allowing Gray to escape. Injured, Cortez later confronts Gray's mother at her home, asking about his actions. Meanwhile, Gray finally arrives at Fisk's apartment, holding him at gunpoint. Calmly, Fisk reveals that the intended target wasn't Gray's wife, Asha, but Gray himself. He confesses that he didn't use real bullets on Gray that night. Instead, he used something to temporarily paralyze him. Then, he urges Gray to accept his new powers and join their side, but Gray is focused only on getting revenge and attacks Fisk. They engage in a fierce battle, where it quickly becomes clear that Fisk's abilities are much stronger than Gray's. Just as Fisk is about to kill him, Stim, the AI, reveals some crucial information. Cirque was Fisk's brother. Hearing this, Gray taunts Fisk, describing how he killed Cirque, which stirs up Fisk's emotions. It's taking advantage of Fisk's momentary distraction, Gray strikes and ultimately kills him by smashing his head against some glass. Afterward, Gray checks Fisk's phone and discovers a shocking voicemail from Aaron, instructing Fisk to kill him. In the next scene, Gray confronts Aaron in his lab, accusing him of intentionally paralyzing him and murdering his wife or a twisted experiment. And Gray tries to shoot Aaron, but just then, Cortez arrives and points her gun at him. A struggle ensues and Gray begs Stim not to harm the detective. Realizing Stim won't listen, he convinces Cortez to use her stun gun on him. This temporarily disables Stim. Be in no fables, which Sternus Comer disables Stim. Iran then admits that Stim was behind everything all along and forced him to cooperate. The AI had wanted a host body without any implants or chips, and Gray was an ideal candidate. Stim orchestrated the accident and sent the thugs to paralyze Gray, all to take over his body. Aaron reveals that Stem's ultimate plan is to kill him, preventing him from creating any more microchips. With a tearful admission, Aaron explains that he was never really in control and was following orders from Stem. At that moment, Stem regains control of Gray and violently kills Aaron by stabbing him in the head. Stem then moves to kill Cortez, but Gray turns the gun on himself, trying to stop it. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a hospital where Gray awakens, finding himself able to move normally. His confusion deepens when he realizes that things seem unreal, yet he feels content. Just then, the scene jumps back to Aaron's lab, where Cortez instructs Gray to lower his gun. Stem then reveals that Gray's consciousness is trapped in a virtual reality where he feels at peace. In this illusion, Gray believes he is with his wife and has no memory of the horror he's endured. Stem explains it only needed to break Gray's mind to trap him in his subconscious, giving it full control of his body. After explaining this, Stem coldly shoots Cortez, removes any evidence, and casually walks away, leaving Gray lost in his imaginary world. Subscribe for popcorn. We are racing towards 1,000 subscribers.